Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. I'm gonna speak in Arabic, so please use your translation machines. في البداية مرحبا بكم جميعا كل باسمه وصفته. أرحب بالرئيس
I welcome Mr. President Monsef Al-Marzouki, the President of the Arab Council of Democratic Revolutions and the icon of the Arab Spring. I welcome Dr. Ayman Noor, the Vice President of the Arab Council of Democratic Revolutions and the Chairperson of the Tomorrow Party in Egypt. I also welcome Mr. Imad Daimi, member of the Democratic Revolutions and member of the Tunisian Parliament. I also welcome Mr. Jawdat Yilmaz, Vice President of the AK Party Foreign Relations in the party, and Mr. Farouk Yuz, the Turkish ambassador to Yemen, and the representative of AFAD and other Turkish institutions. I also welcome Mr. Sakhar Al-Wajih, the parliamentary member of Yemen, and Dr. Al-Ghanem and Mr. Shawqi Al-Qadi as well, the Yemeni member of parliament. I welcome you all of you in his or her name and title, and I'm sorry if I forgot anybody. Welcome all. Dear colleagues, it is highly important to meet today to discuss the Yemeni situation in this conference, that we were keen to include a mixture of Yemeni and Western researchers to get more serious inputs and or wider viewpoints about the Yemeni problems. First of all, I would like to thank the researchers who are participating in this conference, and I wish you all the success in the discussion sessions, and I hope that the recommendations will be very important in pushing the peace building in Yemen. Dear friends, for 4 years, Yemen has been living harsh conditions because of the coup and the war. The previous period proved how strong the Yemeni community in being resilient to the harsh conditions. As important as it is, but it is dangerous because chaos and war imposed against Yemenis and the strengthening of armed militias or armed groups put Yemen under great risk. Amidst all these conditions under which Yemen is going, let me present some important facts that must not be overlooked, and anybody who is discussing the Yemeni condition or Yemeni situation must take into consideration these points. In 2011, the peaceful revolution of February erupted as part of the Arab Spring revolutions that took place in the Arab world. These revolutions demanded freedom, justice, dignity, democracy, and the rule of law. These revolutions demanded that people rule itself by itself through democratic means, real democratic means, and the peaceful rotation of power. And it was faced by the counter-revolution in the region, which found that having free democracies pose a high risk on their very existence, which is the reason of the conflict that we see in the region, which includes Yemen, of course. Of course, the entire Arab Spring is an enemy to these counter-revolutions. So the Houthi militias were funded and supported to be the dagger by which the back of the Yemeni revolution and the Yemeni Spring is being stabbed. As for the Arab Spring, the armies and some of the corrupt political elites and extremist groups were supported to make a coup against the democracy that was in formation in the region. It is very important to say that these schemes, unfortunately, were not away from the eyes of the Western governments. These Western governments that failed in the test of democracy, those Western governments that have always spoken about democracy, its principles, and they preached about that. But when the Arab Spring emerged, a lot of these governments chose to side with the dictators. I would like to remind you with another important point, which is the transition towards democracy. Yemen was at the footsteps of getting into a smooth democracy transition where political parties and community powers participated in a comprehensive national dialogue that lasted for 9 months. This conference led to or produced a constituent charter that gives the principles of the Yemeni states and the draft constitution that we drafted with the participation of everybody, including the Houthi militia and the party of the ousted Saleh. However, unfortunately, after a few weeks of drafting the constitution and a few weeks before going to the referendum on the constitution and holding the different elections, including on the different levels, local, parliamentary, and presidential constitution based on, in accordance with the new constitution, to reach a safe, democratic transition and smooth transition that doesn't exclude anybody. However, the coup led by the ousted Ali Saleh and the Houthi militia, who were supported by Saudi Arabia, Iran, and United Arab Emirates, in a paradox where those three countries united against the Arab Spring and who became the enemy of those who are participating in the Arab Spring revolutions. So Yemen got into this dark tunnel, and the country underwent complex conflicts and wars, which added layers of complexity to the Yemeni problem. Then the Arab coalition led by the Saudi Arabia came to existence under the pretext to save Yemen, and under the slogan of intervening in Yemen to restore legitimacy in Yemen. We started to see a suspicious agenda, which led to the deterioration of policy in Yemen. So instead of restoring legitimacy or supporting legitimacy in Yemen, legitimacy started to be surrounded and curtailed in order to promote agenda that is affiliated to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. This agenda was represented in taking control over the Yemeni soil and Yemeni wealth. Agenda that started to destroy Yemen and extract the geography or territories of Yemen, taking advantage of the chaos in Yemen and the lack of authority that is very obvious. Dear colleagues, Yemen is witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe that hasn't been seen in the world for decades. Massive destruction in the infrastructure, especially in the service sectors, including education, health, water, and electricity. Over 22 million Yemenis are in need of one form or another of humanitarian assistance, according to reports by United Nations agencies. More than 8 million Yemenis are suffering because of the shortage of food, including 2 million children and more than 2 million pregnant and nursing women. Of course, warning after warning says that the people in need and those who are hungry will exceed 14 million Yemenis, which means more than half of the Yemeni population. That's based on UN reports and other humanitarian agencies' reports. A few days ago, Amal al-Husseini died, and her image was on the front pages of the international media. Her death was because of acute malnutrition. Amal is one of millions of children who are falling just like the tree leaves of autumn under the airstrikes of the Arab coalition and under the bombardment of the Houthi militias, and as well as under starvation and hunger. Dear colleagues, in the meantime, we hope that there is a sincere international tendency to end the war in Yemen and to work on peace negotiations to come up with a political settlement that will put an end to 4 years of war. From here, I would like to commend all these serious calls to end the war in Yemen and to build peace, including the call made by the U.S. Department Minister or Secretary of Department and the Defense Secretary in the United States to put an end to the war. However, we need to remind everybody here that Yemen has no shortage of speeches. Now we are in the beginning of the 5th year of this war that is destroying the Yemeni human being and fragmenting Yemen. This war requires a decisive decision. Yemen now, God forbid, is at the beginning of fragmentation. The war in Yemen needs international resolution to stop the war, because the continuation of this war is not only a catastrophe on Yemen alone, it is a catastrophe and a threat to the international peace and security. Once again, I call to stop the war in Yemen and to put an end to the siege that is imposed on Yemen. I also call to empower the legitimate authority to do its function and to reopen the seaports, airports, and to allow the authority to do its function towards the Yemeni population. I also call on United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia to put their hands off Yemen, and I call upon them to stop supporting the terrorist groups and the armed militias and the gangs of killing and mercenaries who are killing people and destroying Yemen, as well as assassinating Yemeni figures, especially in Taz and Aden. I also call to put an end to the intervention of the mullahs of Tehran, who are seeking to take control over Yemen through the support they provide to the Houthi militias. In this context, I support, as the Yemeni people support, the efforts or the endeavor of the UN Special Envoy Martin Griffith on holding peace talks that we hope that they will be held very soon. I call to seize this opportunity to bring peace, because at the end of the day, no war lasts forever. This war will end one day, and we need to start peace as of now. The legitimate power, the legitimate authority must act with a national agenda to maintain the sovereignty and independence of Yemen, and to establish the principles of the republic, democracy, and equal citizenship to be the basis or the foundation of this state. The Houthis must give a priority to the Yemeni or the national interests over any other agenda, because the personal interests they have will not be successful at all. They must send peace, messages of peace for the Yemeni community, starting with the release of all detainees. They must provide that in good faith, as an initiative of good faith. We, the Yemeni people, are eager to find peace, and we will make peace. We are a people that deserves peace and deserves to live in peace and security, and we deserve to work in full partnership with the international community for promoting international peace, international and regional peace and security. I believe if the Emirati, Saudi, Iranian intervention is stopped, then as Yemeni people who own this great history and this real will to build our state and to head for the future, I believe we can build peace to the full. If the Iranian, Emirati, Saudi intervention is stopped, we will build lasting peace. Not only that, we will also build the democratic, free state, a state of justice, equality, and the rule of law. And we will be the strategic partner for the world in maintaining its security and stability. Of course, we have our own vision for building lasting peace in Yemen, and to achieve the comprehensive national reconciliation that we see that no lasting peace can be achieved or any reconciliation can be achieved unless we go through the following steps. 1, putting an end to the war in Yemen and lifting the siege, and the withdrawal of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates from the country. Returning to resuming the political process at the point it is stopped at by the coup and the war, establishing a military council under a United Nations sponsorship that works on withdrawing weapons from all militias, the Houthi militia and all other militias, where the state will be the only one with the exclusive right to possess weapons. And this military council must work on building the army and security in the country according to national principles that maintain the sovereignty, independence, and the freedom of the country. Establishing a national government from all the components after the Houthi turns into a political party that abandons violence and weapons, or a technocratic government. Both governments should be established under UN auspices. This government should organize the referendum on the draft constitution and holding the elections on the different levels, from the smallest units to the regions to the parliamentary elections and the presidential elections, and establishing a National Reconciliation Commission that provides reparations and redress the victims of the war. And one final point, the reconstruction of Yemen and the commitment of Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates to compensate for the destruction that they caused in Yemen during the war. Dear colleagues, finally, I would like to repeat my gratitude for your presence, and I hope that this conference will come up with important recommendations for formulating or important outputs for formulating recommendations or important points that will help Yemenis and international efforts in building lasting, sustainable peace in Yemen. And here I would like to thank Ms. Misk Al-Junaid, who is the CEO of Tawakkol Karman Foundation, and all of her team, who is working seriously for the success of this conference. I don't want to conclude without talking about a very important issue that raised the attention of the entire world, not only Yemen or Turkey, which is the murder of the dear friend and colleague journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The death of Jamal Khashoggi shocked the world because of the nature of the place of the murder and because of the way of the murder and how an entire state was involved or is involved in a crime that holds the nature and characteristics of the crimes of terrorist groups. I here call again for revealing the truth and holding accountable all perpetrators or those responsible for these crimes, regardless of their position or their title. And here I would like to warn against any deal that might be stricken in behind the scenes. The call for the justice for Khashoggi is not a call for revenge. It is for promoting justice, not only against the tools or those who did that by their hands, but those who ordered the killing. Once again, I hope that the Turkish Attorney General will be successful in his investigation, and the truth will be revealed and justice is served. And I hope that the criminal who escaped justice in the past will not be able to escape justice this time. We need to continue asking the question, where is the dead body of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and who gave the order to kill him? Thank you very much.